Hi, I'm Ricky Kalmon, and welcome to another episode of Amplify Your Mindset. Thank you for listening. And if you're watching on our platform, whether it's from my mobile app or from our site, thank you. Really do appreciate your support. You can check out my book, Leverage Your Mindset, available online from Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Target, or wherever books are sold. And don't forget to check out my mobile app on mindfulness and meditation. If you want to enhance a growth mindset, just check out the app. Go to your app store and search the title, Ricky Kalmon. Let's get on with the show. Jeb Blount. He is the author of 13 books, including Fanatical Prospecting, Sales EQ, People Follow You, Virtual Selling, and his latest book, Virtual Training. Jeb advises a who's who of the world's leading organizations and their executives on the impact of emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills on customer-facing activities. He's among the world's most respected thought leaders on prospecting, sales, leadership, and customer experience. Jeb Blount, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ricky. I'm glad to be here. It's very. I guess it's. I'm just grateful that you chose to get me on your show.
I'm grateful for your time. You're an expert. I love that you're a thought leader because a thought leader thinks outside the status quo, is always trying to become innovative. You're an entrepreneur. I want to know before we start talking about Sales Gravy and the platform that you created and all your speaking events, where did this all start for you? I'm always fascinated with that question.
Well, yeah, it started this business started for me in the Great Recession because I was a corporate executive. You're up in the Atlanta area. I had a corner office in the Porsche North America building on the perimeter, a couple of secretaries. I flew around the world in a corporate jet. And, I lived the Fortune 500 lifestyle, which is sort of like a rock star lifestyle. And then one day the bottom fell out of the market, and it turned out that my company didn't really have a need for a dude that flew around the world in a corporate jet, entertaining salespeople with a couple of assistants. So I had to go figure out something else, and I went and looked for other jobs that were in that same genre. I was interviewing for CEO jobs and some pretty high level executive positions. And in the middle of it all, I remember I was in Chicago in an interview, and I was just going through the motions, and I got on the airplane. I'm like, I don't want to do this again. I've done this. I did great at it. I was very, very successful in my career. I, shot through the corporate world like a rocket ship. I don't want to do it. So I went home and told my wife, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm going to start my own thing. And she goes, what's that thing? I went, I don't know, because I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, the only thing I'm really good at, I really two things. I'm great at horses, and I'm great with salespeople, and I can't make any money at horses. So I'm going to go into working with salespeople. So I started Sales Gravy back in 2007, right at the beginning of 2007, 2006, Christmas time. And it's evolved now into we're the 19th fastest growing privately held company in the state of Georgia, and which is fantastic. We're number one in the CSRA area, so we're just cranking. But it was the journey started when I got kicked out of my butt and didn't really have anything else to do, so I figured out how to start a company.
Jeb, I've always said that fear can be used as fuel. And it sounds like you have done exactly that. You pivoted. You were an entrepreneur because you took a risk and you knew if the risk paid off, it was going to pay off in your best interest. But you took fear to figure out what was going to be best for you.
Yeah, it's interesting about fear. There was a lot of fear. The fear for me primarily was though the fear of failing. Like I didn't want to have to crawl back and say, I try to do this on my own. And essentially, when you work at that level in the the big corporate world, when you go out on your own as an entrepreneur, and essentially you're burning the ships because you're kind of on the outs. People don't trust people that go start their own business. I lived in that world for a really long time. People typically in the corporate world, you're not taking big risks because you've got a lot at stake. People who are entrepreneurs have the ability to take a lot of risks because, if you fail, you can start all over again. So the fear for me was making the choice to go out on my own, but then if I didn't make it work, having to go back, crawling on my belly, and the embarrassment of that with my peers, which is that was all things that were circulating in my own mind. I mean, it wasn't for real. I don't think that anybody would have judged me that way, and if they would have, it wouldn't have mattered. But that fear drove me to work and work and work and figure it out. I made a lot of mistakes, and it took a long time to build and do it the right way without taking undue risks that could potentially tank our company. But it was the fear of failure more than anything that drove me. I mean, I hate to lose. I hate to lose. And and so I just, that for a long time. And it's interesting when you think about that, especially from a mindset standpoint. For the first like 3 to 4 years of starting this business, I would wake up in the middle of the night with like this completely overwhelmed with the fear that I was going to be greeting people at Walmart. Now they don't have greeters at Walmart anymore, but that was like, I was going to be doing that because no one else would hire me. And then there's a point where, especially when you're doing anything, whether you're a new salesperson or an entrepreneur or a new executive or whatever you're doing in life, there's a point where you start getting confidence that it's going to be okay. Like it becomes sustainable. And you know that just like any big organization, it's really hard to knock you down unless you're doing stupid things. So there was a point where we shifted from, the fear of failure to what we live in today. The entrepreneur of the day lives in the fear that there's something out there in the world that you don't know about, or that there's an opportunity you're not capturing that could impact you. So it's it's FOMO right, more than anything,
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
I think I think you shift, but I do think fear is a fuel. I think fear is important. The reason we have fear, the reason God gave us fear was for, obviously to make sure that we stay alive so we don't do stupid things. But it's also something that energizes us and keeps us alert and keeps us focused. So I think it's all about the mindset, and you're an expert in mindset. It's a mindset of how you look at it. Like how do you treat it? And if you treat it with a healthy outlook, I think fear can be your best friend.
Do you remember the first time you walked on stage now as this new adventure started? And what was that like?
Yeah, I was always walking on stage. I mean, that was the thing about my career from the very early days where I used to work for a company called Nutrisystem, where, I found any opportunity to be a speaker or to speak in public or to train from when I was in high school. I gave an entire speech to my high school. I went to the Model UN and I came back and did the entire speech with a British accent in South Georgia. So that was interesting. So I was always a person that was on stage. So like being on stage doesn't cause me fear. It's my most comfortable place. Like I'm always afraid that I'm going to screw up before I go on. I'm going to forget something. But when I get on stage, everything just washes away. Like I'm, and as long as I'm prepared, it's like a stream of consciousness comes out of me. The only time I've ever been like really, really nervous on stage is I did a speech in an arena, and there were somewhere around 30,000 people, and they were like up on the sides, like you're almost in the round. And I was a speaker that was deep on the agenda. So I was there like in the middle of this, watching this crowd.
Mhm.
And that was the only time in my entire life that my heart was beating. And I was doing all the things you could do. Like I was grabbing hold of my chair and doing anything I could to get some of the adrenaline out. And it turned out great. But looking at all those people, and that many people all in one place, that was a little bit unnerving. And then when we, back in the early parts of the pandemic, when we shifted to keynotes in a virtual environment, and we have you and I were talking about studios earlier. I've got a 5 studio complex here, and we've got our own production crew, and we've got a big keynote speaker, our keynote speech studio that's really set up for multi-camera shoot. We did a speech the other day, believe it or not, Ricky, incredible, where we have a 45-foot green screen in there. So we did a 3D green screen shoot, and they projected me onto a stage in Mexico in 3D. Unbelievable.
Mm.
So we can do some amazing things. But the very beginning of that, I was unable to sleep at night. I was so nervous it made me sick. Like, I mean, it's literally ill, because the one place where I'm comfortable is on stage. I can see people, I can interact with them. You talked about, you do some, you're a comedian and you do some fun things, especially when you're doing hypnosis and you're showing people. I imagine that every one of them is a little bit different, because you just never know who's going to be in the crowd that you can connect with. And so that was what I was able to do. So I could walk on stage in anything. Well, in a studio, you can't really tell jokes because you don't know if anybody's laughing at them. You have to keep it straight. You have to be, on message the entire time. There is really no ad-libbing, because there's no possibility that you can you can ad-lib in the audience and then they would have context
Right.
for what you were doing. I couldn't sleep. Like, I mean, and when I say sick, I mean, literally I'd give a keynote and then I'd be in the bathroom sick.
Jeb, you
So
should have called me. I could have helped you with that like that. It would have been
yeah,
the best night's
should
sleep
have.
ever.
Well,
We'll have to talk off air.
here's what
Uh,
solved it, right? What solved it was over the last year, we just did our 211th keynote in the last year, all virtual. And after you do 10, you get better at it. After you do
mhm.
20, you're like, hey, I can handle this. After you get 30, you started figuring out this is just an obstacle. We talk a lot about obstacle immunity with salespeople. It's just an obstacle. And you just have to face it over and over and over again. So what was fearful for me was the inability to work in that median the way I worked in other medians, and people paying us a lot of money for me to show up and be awesome. And what over time you learned was treat the camera like it's a human being. And by the way, Ricky, what came out of that from a keynote speaker standpoint, I'm 10 times better now on a physical stage than I was before because I'm more disciplined than I
Yeah.
was before because of what we had to learn in the pandemic. And now we have all kinds of different ways that we can work with audiences. And it's been an amazing year. But I mean, that was for me, the fear was just getting out of that comfort zone and then performing at a high level.
I couldn't agree with you more on everything you just said. It's interesting. You overlapped on two different topics in here. Let's go back to the first part of when you started talking about being prepared. When you are prepared as a sales individual, a leader, a customer service expert, whatever it may be, your fears and phobias go away once you're in action. If you know your content, you know your product and service, you know it from in and out, you don't have to think about it. It just comes off the top of your head or even off out of your lips. It takes away from what was holding you back from your fullest potential at that very moment. So you did that on your live events, and then you turned that into your virtual events. I remember my first virtual event. I just thought, okay, I'm doing a news broadcast. Just assume nobody's going to react and act like they want to listen to you and look at that lens. And literally, again, same thing. You just kind of retrain your brain not to pause for the reaction of the audience. You treat it as though you're talking to the person literally at their home, and you pivot very quickly with the skills that you know. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think we started going back to doing live events in May of this year of 2021, and I noticed immediately how much better I became, and I become better every day because I challenge myself to be better. You just validated everything that I believe in, and I'm so great to hear you say it. And I hope the listeners hear this. And the lesson here is being more prepared, being able to pivot and figure out what's going to make everything work better. And for you to serve not only yourself better, you serve your clients better, much better. Let's pivot a little bit here. Let's talk about Sales Gravy, your whole platform of training people and organizations, not only the individual leaders, but you train thousands of people with Sales Gravy tools and techniques. Go into it. Talk about what is Sales Gravy?
Well, Sales Gravy is a global training organization that grew from the humble me literally in my flip flops in Florida, like banging the phone prospecting, to today where we've got 30 trainers on our team and we continue to expand. We're growing fast. We're a hyper growth company, and when I say growing fast, we're doubling the size of the company every single year, and we are a boutique training organization in that we try not to the best of our ability train out of a box. So we treat every customer as if they're different. Now, some customers want training out of the box, but it's never been what we've done. We really shape all of our training around each customer individually. So we have our core frameworks. We're a framework based methodology, and what a framework allows you to do is to give a salesperson a set of rails to run on, but allow them to shift the way they approach each situation based on the context of that situation. So no one's ever in a box, no one's ever in a corner. And we certainly do not believe that there is a black and white in sales. Like this is the only way of doing things. We believe that everything works. It's really about the probability of the thing that you're doing working in the situation in which you find yourself. So we believe in that. So as a training organization, we built a really deep set of content, probably deeper than any other organization on earth in terms of what we can teach people around the entire cycle or continuum of sales from the business process or the business development process, sales process, onboarding customers, account management, expanding inside of account management, customer success, leadership, every single thing that you do in a customer facing environment to deal with a customer and to grow your company. So everything that we do is focused on sales, leadership, customer experience, customer service, and helping companies accelerate the growth of the company through those particular professions.
And for the listeners and watchers here, we're not only talking about content that you read, we're talking about live content, correct me if I'm wrong, plus video content that people can go log in once they subscribe or they're involved into the Sales Gravy platform. There's a plethora. I mean, it's literally how many how many different videos and options are there? Do you keep track of it, or it's just I just know there's a lot.
Well, I think maybe it's important to explain who we are. So I think maybe I didn't do a good job of that. So we're a sales training company. So I have trainers who are on the street right now. We're out with companies and we're teaching. We are running. We're literally running. We teach from all over the world. So we'll start in the morning in Europe, and then we'll end up in Asia at night. We teach in a VILT format, so VILT, which is virtual instructor-led training, and an ILT, which is classroom-based training. We deliver keynotes, we do workshops, we work with our clients to develop training for those clients. We also have a platform called Sales Gravy University, which is what you're talking about. And Sales Gravy University is a platform where a lot of small sales teams come. So if you're a sales team, you got 5-6 people, hard to afford to have one of our trainers come on site and teach you, but you can come to a virtual workshop or virtual training, which is live, which makes us different than most learning platforms. And those are running 2-3 a week where you can come in, you can subscribe, you can get access to that. If you're a private company and you want to do one on your own, you call in, give us a call, we'll set the thing up and we'll run a workshop for you there. We also have 1,000 hours, a little more than 1,000 hours of e-learning content on the platform itself. And what makes us unique there, Ricky, is that in a lot of cases, like if you're an individual trainer or you're an expert or you wrote a book, typically you've got an e-learning platform and it's all your stuff. And that's great, except for that's just one point of view. What we committed to at Sales Gravy was taking the point of view of lots of experts. So we grab experts like yourself or Victor Antonio, Anthony Andrino, Brent Tillman, and myself, and many of our trainers, and we let them put their content on our site. We pay them for that content. We have content from multiple sources, sometimes on multiple, multiple different training programs on the same idea. So Victor Antonio grabbed me one day and said, well, I've got a thing on prospecting. Does that conflict with yours? And I said, no. I said, I have one perspective. You have another perspective. If someone's trying to learn, doesn't it make sense that they would learn all the perspectives? And then that allows them to choose what's going to work best for them. And sometimes it's a combination of those things. So we created this platform that's really easy for people to use. We include live training with the subscription. So the subscription is $97. And if you're listening and you've never taken a course there, first-time users, you can take your first course for free. Just use the code free course. So you can pick any course you want. Just take it for free course for first-time users. So you can go check it out. But it allows individual salespeople, it allows small sales teams to have access to it. And then larger sales teams will come to us and we'll like build a suite of training programs for them. And we put them on a private training portal, which is branded to them. They have reporting, or we'll scorm the training. We'll give the training to them to put onto their own LMSs so we can create an ecosystem for them. So it's really allowed us to have a complete service for our clients when it comes to sales training. And because our platform is truly a world-class platform, whether you're a huge company and you need content to put into your LMS, or you're a small company and you don't have an LMS, but you need one and you want to have your own content, we can help you with that. Or if you're an individual and you just want to upskill, it's all there. So it's a cool place. But Sales Gravy, whether it's in classroom training that we're working with a team on, or it's using our learning platform, we got you covered.
It's phenomenal that you've taken the old school training of textbook training and made it so accessible to so many different people in different ways. And I love the idea that you're synergetic with other people to complement the idea of training the mind, training the brain. you could say the same thing 5 times to somebody, but when they could hear it from the next door neighbor, all of a sudden it's
It's
like, wait
true.
a minute, it's
It's
we,
true.
we do that with our kids, but because that's the human mind, just it becomes, if you will, closed off. It becomes very tunnel vision, and we have to expose ourselves to different ways of learning, to training, to listening, to watching information, to growing, or we just stay at the status quo. We get really comfortable, and when you grow personally, boy, there's something that happens. It's something we know that feeling. You know that feeling when you're successful and you want to push yourself a little bit harder, and it's almost like this, that celebration, that party that you have in your head going, that was really cool. I did something good today. I served a client. And by the way, I made money, and that's what's really cool is because when you offer, when you do really good work, people will pay you. I
Yes,
get it. It's a for-profit business, but when you do amazing work, they pay you more money. Wow.
that's
Who
right.
doesn't want that?
Well, I mean, I think that's the mindset of focusing on the service first. How are you serving other people? And are you doing something that you like to do while you're serving other people? And if you're doing those things, the money tends to come. We go back to sales. A salesperson is only focused on the commission check, then people can typically see through that, like when it's all about you.
Mhm.
But when you reverse that and you focus on, let me help my customer solve the problem, even if sometimes that means walking away because I'm not the right solution for them, or introducing them to someone else that can help them, that servant mindset, the way that you I guess approach every relationship, I think has a tendency to pay off over the long haul. And I think the same thing with selling. I love sales. My mission in life is to advance sales as a profession. So I'm get caught up on, is this a good idea or a bad idea? It's an idea. And and I think that people need to be exposed to all of those ideas. And the more you're exposed to all those ideas, the easier it is for you to format or your own way of looking at things. But more than anything, what happens is when you're starting to feed the mind, feed the mind, feed the mind, is that you'll be in a situation, and it's kind of like what I said earlier when you asked me about being on stage. You remember the first time? I'm like, I've always been on stage, and when I'm on stage, everything just opens up. Like I'm in my own world. Everything slows down. Everything works. When you're feeding your mind and you're constantly learning, when you're on stage and you encounter a situation where, say, a person asks a question or they say something from the audience, or if you're a comedian, they heckle you, I mean, whatever the case may be, it's incredible how the brain finds exactly the right thing to say. And you think to yourself, man, like, where did
Mhm.
that come from? Well, it came from something that you read or came something that you listened to. Same thing happens when you're standing in front of a customer and you're trying to sell something. If you're feeding the mind, so when you're in your car, if you're listening to good podcasts or listening to audiobooks, by doing that, what you're doing is teaching your brain how to think. If you're reading on a regular basis, it sometimes doesn't feel like the things that you're reading are connecting or that you're getting it all. But then you're in the middle of a strategy meeting, or you're in the middle of preparing to go into a tough negotiation, and everything, all the insight that you need to be excellent in that moment comes to the surface, and suddenly it's accessible. But if you're not feeding the mind, you don't get that information. So what I've always found is that the more I read, the more I listen to, the more I learn. And it's sometimes hard to do that when you're busy, but the better you are in the moments when you need it the most, even though it's not something that you're consciously trying to find. It just happens. So that's, to me, is why learning is so important. And I think that's why, from a selling standpoint, and that's all we do. Like, we just teach salespeople, we teach sales leaders, and we teach people who stand in front of customers. We want to give people the broadest perspective as possible, and at the same time, we want to serve the people who give us information. I love, like, I call Victor Antonio. He's a Atlanta guy up in the Alpharetta area.
We've had Victor on the show. My listeners
Yeah,
know. Yes,
I
absolutely.
love calling Victor and go, did you see that check I just wrote you? Because his content's really popular. And he's like, man, this is huge. I go, yeah, it gets better every time. Give me some more content. So I like doing that. I like to serve my community, serve the people in my world that I love and care for. And I can do that through this platform, and at the same time help everyone else. And that's one of the reasons why we continue to grow. We have such great reviews, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do what you love the most.
I mean, it's very gratifying. I mean, you mentioned something earlier, and I love that you said it too, because it goes back to my years of listening to Zig Ziglar about, if you're in the sales business and if you're trying to close a sale, it's almost that you're in the wrong business. Sales as an emotional connection. You talked about that. You talked about serving people and making them happy and fulfilling their needs and offering solutions. And that was one of the earlier things I remember in a teenager listening to Zig Ziglar going, that's fascinating. And so every time I was in something, I never wanted to be in the sales business. I wanted to be in the solutions business. Every business I ever created, every platform, everything was all about the mindset of being a solution provider. If this offers a solution to somebody, by the way, and they get success from it, you get paid.
Right.
That's how it works. And when you have the mindset, the individual, the leader, the in customer service, the product, person, it changes your perspective. But you tapped on some things here, and you were talking in my world, and I loved hearing it. I love that you reinforced. I'm not going to repeat it because you said it, but some of this very basic principles of learning. Even successful people, even people that you and I think are really successful, I think they get more successful because they understand that self-discovery never ends. You train your brain on a regular basis, your results are unlimited.
Oh, I think that's exactly right. I think that but that's I always say outlearn, out earn, right? So the more you learn, the more you're going to earn, the more competitive you're going to be. And it's just a matter of taking the time to invest in yourself. I also think that you talked about the closed mindset. There are a lot of people, and I love to see them because you can identify these people immediately, and it makes me sad. I'm just disappointed in people who, if you'll notice it on Amazon. So you'll take a book, and the book's getting a bunch of reviews, and they're good, and then somebody will come along and give it like a 2-star review. And if you're an author, you know what I'm talking about. But you get a 2-star review, and the person says nothing new here. I read the book, but there was nothing new here. And think what a closed mindset. And
Mhm.
I feel sorry for people who do that. And sometimes people will come to me directly and say, I read your book, but there was nothing new there. And that's what I say to them. I said, I really feel bad for you. I feel bad that you took a look at a book that's 300 pages in it, and in the entire 300 pages, you felt like you couldn't find anything new, and you felt like you needed to come tell me that. So,
Mhm.
and if you think about that, if that's the truth, which it's not, right? The reality is that you've decided that you've already learned everything that's possible to ever know. And what you're essentially seeking in the world are magic pills or easy buttons. So you're looking for something that's going to save you from having to work or having to think or having to build strategy or to deal with things that you fear. You're looking for that, and when you don't find it, you say there's nothing new here. I think the other thing that most people have to get and understand is that there really isn't much of anything out there that's new. If we're honest with ourselves, Plato and Aristotle and the Egyptians, human beings that came way before us, already had the human experience. Most of the things that we deal with and think about, they already
Yep.
dealt with and
I
thought
love that.
about and wrote. They just wrote it in a different way. And so what authors are doing today, and what I try to do is I try to write books for me, is take these concepts and modernize them or apply them in a different way or teach it through a story that someone else might not have experienced before. So I think that what we have to recognize is that everything is old. Everything. There is nothing new. Every once in a while, there's something that's brilliant that comes out. But even then, you see the patterns of old inside the new.
Mhm.
Everybody's building on something that was already written, already done. The key in life, I think, is the constant reminder of the things that we already know. We already know, for example, what's right and what's wrong. We just need to be reminded of it from time to time. It's like why, if you're religious, like my wife is a very good Methodist, she reads the Bible every single night. Why? Because she says it reminds me of what's right and what's wrong. Okay. So if I'm in sales, I read Gitomer Sales Bible on a regular basis because it reminds me of what's right and what's wrong. I think that the when I get in front of a group of salespeople, especially people who have tenure, that's the first thing I say to them. I mean, even on stage, I'm like, there's not a single thing I'm going to teach you that you don't already know. What I'm going to do is bring what you know to the surface and remind you that you're not doing the things that you already know that you're supposed to be doing. And people can relate to that. Like they get it and they understand it. In fact, people will say, I read this book. I should have been doing this. I wasn't doing it. Okay, great. Well, if that inspired you to go do that
Yep.
in the short term, good for you. That changed the
That's
behavior.
the purpose. Agree.
So I think
Totally
that's
agree.
what we have to get. And if you've got that closed mindset, like if you've got the
Mhm.
mindset and where, you look at the entire external world and say, everything's against me, right? This is everything is holding me back. I'm the victim. That's the person who says there's nothing new here. That's a really, really horrible and disappointing way to live. But if you can look internally and say, you know what? I can control three things in my life. I can control what I choose to do. I can control how I choose to react, and I can control my mindset. And that's it. There's nothing else. And if you just focus on that, life gets infinitely easier.
Mm. And those people that you said that are negative or doubtful or pessimistic or have a preconceived outcome, they're in the right place then. If they're listening to you, they're in the right place because hopefully eventually you're going to tap into something and you're going to show them how to do things better. Jeb, if you're not taking notes, folks, go back and listen to this podcast again, watch this video again, listen to what Jeb is saying, listen to some of the things that some of these examples. It's great information, or just tell you what, go to his site. I'm going to put all his information about Jeb and Sales Gravy and a link directly to not only your live events that you can offer your companies and teams, and of course the Sales Gravy University that we spoke about, or all the different content and platform that's available. Again, I'll repeat everything at rickykalmon.com. Jeb Blount, thanks for taking some time. I know that you're a busy schedule, so I am grateful for you and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much. I likewise. It's very, very nice to get to know you. Very nice to spend time on your podcast. And thank you so much for having me on.